Okay, in this last video of this little introductory series on Maya, I just wanted to walk through rendering. And we have our goofy, strange scene with the checkerboard pattern in this blobby shape. And I thought I'd render out the animation. We've, at this point, animated it. So if I scroll through here, you can see it's bobbling around because we've done that. We've applied surfacing. We've obviously modeled the setup for it. So if we render it, what's the result? Well, let's just walk back through our render settings. Again, this is with Mental Ray. Let's just look at it real quickly. If we choose Maya software and I click render, it'll knock out something really fast, and again, it doesn't have the smoothing applied. Remember, that's when you press 3 on the keypad with this object. It's instead just showing its base polygons. If I switch it over to Maya hardware, we can take a look at what that does. It puts it together, but now we don't get the surfacing. We have the nice smooth shape, but we no longer see the surfacing. It was a pretty fast render. We can look at Maya vector here. That'll show you something different. Lays it out and it gives us basically just the outlines. And that's not bad. You might say, well, what's that useful for? If you're trying to gauge motion and camera movement, then that's a good thing to have. But then finally, if we come in Mental Ray here, obviously the price we're paying is it's high performing, but it takes a little longer time. So you can see it's taking longer to build this out. What rendering does essentially is it takes all of the three-dimensional wireframe information and it converts it pixel by pixel into a two-dimensional image. And that process, it's having to calculate light, shadows, surfacing for all of the different polygons in the setup. Now we have a relatively basic scene here. I've applied some cool little bump maps and stuff and a few lights, but it's a very basic scene. If you get into thousands or hundreds of thousands of polygons, rendering time becomes much more difficult. But we've got something here that we can start with, so very good. I think if you look at this, the first thought is, well, how do I save this? It generates this for me, but could I save this out and do something with it? Well, notice that there's a little file menu right from there, and you can choose Save Image. And there's all kinds of different image types that you can choose. Maya's IFF file format works fine. Photoshop will support that. You can also save it out as Photoshop, or you can save it in some of these other formats. Let's just, for the sake of argument, let's save it out as an IFF, and I'll just save it to the desktop. And if I open up Photoshop real quickly, let's take a look. Notice that it's 640 by 480. It even gives us the render time on there. It was about 8 seconds. So here in Photoshop, let's open up the guy. I think I named it Blobby. There it is. And you can see Photoshop nicely opens this up and shows us where the object is versus where the background is. When we render it and we get that black background, that background is basically a vacuum. So when you open this in the IFF format, it has this layer saved out, and it breaks out the Maya objects from the background. This can be very handy if you're trying to superimpose this on top of an existing photograph. So that's cool. And if we look down in channels, there aren't any channels here, but it's broken it out into a layer. If I go in back to Maya here and I choose Save As, Save Image, and this time let's save it either as a PSD file or as a TIFF. Here we go. Back over into Photoshop. Here's the PSD file. when you open it up, it has that black background, but notice that under channels, it now has an alpha channel. So I could easily get rid of that background if I wanted. I could go in, make this into a layer, and I could go to channels and select the foreground, invert the selection, and cut out that background and get to where I was with the IFF file. So it's a little bit extra step, but you know, you do get that background if you want that background. So that's kind of nice. And then the TIFF is very similar. JPEG won't save channel information, so JPEG will just store the foreground, background, and all of it. So that's how you save an initial file. But what happens, first of all, if we wanted to add a background here? We can do that. I'm going to go in Maya here. I'm going to go ahead and close this just so we reduce this size. Open this up so it's a little bit bigger. And under View, there's this thing called Image Plane. So I'm going to choose Import Image. And on the desktop here, I have a little image. We'll open it up. It's a little image of the Grand Canyon. And you'll notice that when Image Plane comes in, it has this extra information associated with it. You can attach it to a camera. I'm going to have it just associated with just looking through a camera. So it's no longer, you know, just in all areas. And then if I come down and look through here, there's coverage information. And it's done a pretty good job fitting this in, but I want to take a look and see what's going to actually be rendered. So let's take a look in here. And let's see, in camera settings. So again, I'm under View, Camera Settings, and I'm going to show a film gate. And what the film gate shows me is what's actually going to get rendered when I make an image. And in fact, if I render this right now, we'll see something quite similar. So you can see as it's producing it, well, it's got that background image in there now, but it's got this black strip across the top. So that's not good. Instead, with this guy selected, I can adjust the Y origin. Let's see if I get this right. I was goofing around with this, and I'm not sure I'm going to get it in here. I think it's offset. 0.25. There we go. So 0.25, that's a little high. Let's set it to 0.2. There we go, 0.2. Now we've got kind of this scene coming in behind. It fits inside of the film gate. And in fact, there's two here. There's one that's film gate, and there's another that's a resolution gate. Let's come in and look at the resolution gate. And you can see the resolution gate's a little closer to what that rendering was, 640 by 480. So this is what we're going to see with 640 by 480. So that's a nice little feature to turn on and know what you're actually going to get, especially with these widescreen monitors where what you see is a little different. Now, if we render it right now, that looks better. You know, it has this funky background just to make this strange thing even stranger. It would be nice if I had a little light flooding in over this area. It looks a little strange. Well, and you know, we're going to just forget about the fact that we're getting light from a front source while the sun is setting. But I did adjust a little lamp in the back so that I am getting a little bit of a highlight across the object. Notice that little highlight in the back. That's that third light. Again, we have a key light coming in from this side, a little fill light. And then in the back, I have a little light that's cutting across the top of the shape. Let's go ahead and get this so it's not so inky. So I'm going to come back, and in here, I've got my setup. I'm going to add another area light. And let's move that. Let's drag this guy up, and wow, you can tell it's going to be big and bright. and I'm going to rotate it so I can get it a little into position here. And then let's move it, and I'm going to try something here. I'm going to, if you go under, I think it's panels, notice this is kind of a slick thing. I have the camera, or I'm sorry, I have the area light selected. I can look through selected. Wow, so I'm looking right down on the object. Now that's a little disorienting, so I'm going to pop back here, and let's check. I can probably set another one of these guys to perspective. There's the perspective view. And let's see. I want to move this guy. I'm going to go back to viewing this in perspective too. Sorry. Just want to, sorry, panels, perspective. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and move this back. And let's push it. There we go. A little farther back. So that's going away. And let's pull it up a little bit. And let's bring down its intensity. And now, if I go to that view, let's see, it's panels, look through selected. There we go. Now we can see. Now I can rotate this. So I'm just holding down Option and left mouse clicking, and I can rotate now, and I can actually change how this guy is positioned. So now I've changed the rotation. Notice I've changed the rotation here, and I can move by zooming forward, zooming back. Can hold down Option and pan, and it actually moves that area light away. So that's kind of a slick thing to be able to do. So you can do that with any of your lights. Again, the little section for that is panels, look through selected. Now I'm just going to go back to perspective, and here's the perspective view again. Let's pop in here. Now let's try a render. Okay, much better. This area in the back is filled in. It seems like it's receiving light, but it's not blowing out this area. I was able to turn down the intensity on that light. So yeah, now we've got something that seems to be working a little more. The next step, once we like it, one thing I would recommend is take a couple of shots from throughout your animation. So here's another shot in the animation where it's fairly high. Take a peek and see what that looks like. Just so you don't get any surprises, rendering takes a while, especially when you've got lots of frames. That looks good. It actually looks like it's picking up some sunlight. Again, it's just because I have a spotlight. You can see the spotlight is right here, so the spotlight is kind of acting like the sun. That's just kind of a nice happy accident. So this thing is ready to go. Let's do another one where it squishes. Let's make sure that looks okay. There's the squish. Okay, and with the squish we get a little bit of a shadow happening here. So yeah, it looks like it's ready to go, and look, there's a little guy peeking over and checking this strange thing out. So the next step is actually rendering it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save what I've done because I like it. Now when it's rendering, it's going to render to this location. There's project file, and if I edit the current, or I can even set the project, I can choose where this is going to be saving stuff. And right now I'm going to just continue to save it in the Getting Started folder. But when you're looking for your files, it's important to just know inside of Tom is Documents, Animation, 3D, Maya, Projects, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, in fact, why don't I'll go ahead and set this project. Let's set it here. And I'm going to go to the desktop, new folder, and I'll just call it Weird. There we go. So inside a Weird, there we go. Now when it starts to save, it's going to render to those locations. Now how do we do that? I'm going to bring up my render settings, and again it's just the little 2 dots, and I'm going to go under mental ray. Well, first of all, it says mental ray common here. So first thing, output type, I'm going to just choose from frame animation instead of single frame, name, number, extension. And when I do that, it all of a sudden makes this a multi-frame animation. Now, if I come down, notice that the end frame is 10. Well, I've got about 45 frames in this animation, so I'm going to go ahead and let's type in 48 because it's going to be 2 seconds worth of animation. So I'll just type in 48. And then it comes in and you can have it renumber the frames if you want, all of that stuff. Perspective, I want it to render from the perspective view. It tells me what the image size format's going to be, 640 x 80, that's fine. 72 pixels per inch, etc. So the key thing here is notice that it's saving it inside of this desktop weird folder, so that's good. I know where to find it, and it's going to do files blobby 1 through blobby 48, and I think it's ready to go there. If I go under quality for mental ray, right now it's draft quality. And that's okay for, you know, if you were to really want to make something stunning looking, you might come in and change this. I'm gonna go ahead and move it up to a preview quality, just a little bit better quality, and it automatically sets all of these settings for us. And if you know a whole lot about this stuff, you could fiddle around with it. Let's just look at ray tracing. And you can see it's going to account for reflections and refractions and that kind of stuff. So we've got this set up. It's ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and close it. Again, I'm going to save my file just in case something bad happens. You just always get in the habit of doing that. And I'm going to go ahead and go under Render, and I'm going to just choose Batch Render. And when I do that, look down at the bottom where my cursor is. It says it's rendering with mental ray. It's going to take it a second here and it'll start producing frames. And I'm going to let it sit here for a second. It might take it a minute to take off. But it should show us walking through the frames. And I'm going to pause here and just hate to have dead silence, but let's do that. I can hear the hard drive whirring in the background, so I know it's doing something. I'm going to just come out to the Finder, and let's look in that folder. Now, here's the folder. And you can see it's working away on this, and it's actually rendering it out. Now, each one of these guys, there's no preview in there, but it's cranking away on it. There, it's done another one. And in fact, if I open one of the earlier ones with Photoshop, you can see it's now rendering that shot. So good. It's in process, and what I'm going to do is pause the video. We're going to be like one of those cooking shows. I'm going to pause the video and come back once it's done. Okay, here we are, and baking is complete. You can see that down in the bottom in our little message field it says rendering complete. So let's check out what's happened. if I come over to the Finder, you can see there are 48 frames. I started rendering at 9:03 and it finished at 9:20. So for 48 frames, that's not too bad. It was a little under a minute a frame, almost 30 seconds a frame. But you start to get the idea. This is just 2 seconds worth of animation. What happens if you're trying to do a 30-second commercial, or even worse, a full-length movie, and you're not just doing 640 by 480. Nowadays you do at least HD, and if you were doing cinema, you'd do much higher resolution. So rendering takes time, and remember, I was just using that preview setting too. But all said and done, though, it's gotten a lot of these files in a reasonable time. If I open the last one up into Photoshop, it should look kind of like the first one. Notice that it doesn't have a channel anymore. Since I put in that background, Photoshop sees this whole thing as being one setup. There is a layer, but the layer is the background is integrated. So that's one reason why you might not integrate an image in the background. Having that separated is kind of a good thing. I could always flip this image in using some automated procedure in Photoshop. I don't necessarily need to render it with this. It's kind of hard-coded in this way. So you might think about that if you were doing this long term. But anyway, let's come back here. We've got all of these in this weird folder. I'm gonna just make a new folder in here called Frames. And we'll just drop in all of these frames into this folder. So now, how do we make this into a movie? We've got a whole bunch of frames. Well, there's a couple of things you could do. We could use something like Final Cut Pro or even iMovie to bring in the individual frames and just set them to have a certain amount of time each. Typically what they want to do is show them for 5 seconds or 10 seconds. We'd knock that down to 1/24th of a second if we wanted to do that. There is this little utility, and it's kind of a goofy little utility, and it's inside of the Maya folder. So here's Maya 2010, and it's inside Autodesk, and it's called F-Check. And F-Check is a real basic interface. If I open it up, we get just this blank window here, and I'm sure it has parts to it that are more interesting, but I'm going to just choose File, and I'm going to choose Open Sequence, and let's come out to the desktop and slide down to that weird folder, Frames, and just select the first frame. When it opens, you can see F-Check automatically starts playing this animation. You can see it's hustling through the frames here. And there's some things I can do. I can choose save as sequence if I wanted to, but what I really want to do is save a movie. So I'm going to just choose that, and let's just go back to that weird folder, and I'm going to just save this as, why not, we'll just call it weird. There aren't any QuickTime settings here, so it's just going to knock out a QuickTime movie for us, and I'm going to just say use transformations. Once we're done with F-Check, we can quit that. And notice inside of our folder now we have this weird movie. I can open this up. Just opens into QuickTime. We can go in here and loop it if we want. And sure enough, let's go ahead and make this a little larger. And it saves with a pretty nice little quality there. One thing that you get with preview quality rather than draft quality is the edges are a little smoother. They turn on anti-aliasing a little bit better in there. Notice you can really see the shadows happening. There's shadows happening from the two different lights that are on this. Actually, there's 3 on here, isn't there? I don't think the third light is casting a shadow across. as it goes up in the air. You can see it passes through the lighting, so it gets darker up there and then comes down. Down here you see the highlights across the top of it and a little bit of halo. So it's a pretty effective little animation, and it's again just 2 seconds worth. Oh, there's kind of our secondary blob shape. Remember we came in there and I just was grabbing those little doohickeys and making them bounce around a little extra, so you can see that they have kind of a little bit of extra motion to them after the rest of it's finished. So just something that makes it look a little more rubbery. It's really strange looking with that bump map applied to it as well. So inside of QuickTime, if you have QuickTime Pro, we could go in and adjust this if we wanted it to play at a different frame rate. But right now it's going to do 24 frames per second, and that's fine. Notice it's 640 by 480. File size is pretty big. It's using just this animation codec, which is a pretty old codec, but it has nice high quality. If you wanted to save this out with a little bit better compression, you could save it out using H.264 or something like that. You'd need to open QuickTime Pro. I'm just using QuickTime Player here. But anyway, now we've taken it all through. We've built a model, we've put in some lighting, and you can see it has some it has a pretty good strange realism about it, because of the way that the lighting's been set up and the texturing on the file, and then doing a little bit of secondary animation. So I hope this has been useful for you, and let me know if you have questions. Thanks.